You know what it's like to feel misunderstood. You know, you say the same thing 4 different times in 5 different languages, but nothing is getting through. That's how I feel every single day, both in society and in my own body. You see, I was born with spastic cerebral palsy. Spastic cerebral palsy is an injury at birth that affects the mind, it injures the brain, and it affects muscle movement. So my muscles are very rigid. So it affects the way that I walk, my mobility. The one thing that kept me inspired to do more, even though my biggest challenges were physical, that included surgeries where they cut, lengthened, and transferred muscles, and decades of occupational, physical therapy. It didn't matter, because you just get through it. Whatever comes at us, you just find a way to overcome. Now, what kept me going above everything else was my escape. My escape when I wasn't in the hospital. My escape of sports. I wanted to be an athlete. I would go home and I'd throw my book bag as a 10-year-old against the door. My mom loved that. And I would turn on a game. And I admired my favorite athlete celebrating after a win. And I wanted to be just like them. This is the first time I felt the taste of competition. This is Little League Baseball, and I'm 10 years old. I'm at bat, I'm taking my cuts. And the first pitch, I'm a little bit behind. I should be better at that. But the second pitch, I made great contact, and what I'm thinking is, I just got to get to first base. You can't score until you get to first base. And here I am heading home. And as I hit home plate, I feel like we just won. The ironic thing about that was, at that age, you're not keeping score. Now, if I were to tell you that 2 weeks prior to this, I wasn't supposed to be there, when my own mother signed me up to play Little League Baseball, the Little League committee, everyone in which we knew who was on that Little League committee, said, we don't want Jeff to play. They made my mom get 3 separate waivers, meaning she had to take off work 3 separate times. One for a physical therapist, one for a surgeon, and then one to get signed from the Little League lawyer. What kind of Little League has lawyers? That's pretty impressive to begin with. But the last call was my mom and the Little League lawyer on the phone. And the lawyer says to my mom, Sherry, we're just looking out for your son. We don't want him to get hurt. And her response was, and you think I do? You're hurting him in a way that will affect him for the rest of his life. Now, fast forward 3 months later, 5th grade intramural basketball, we're wearing our PE uniforms. Now, only 5 people can start, and I wasn't one of the starters. But that didn't bother me, because everybody's supposed to get close to equal playing time. But as the first quarter went by, and I still wasn't in, and the second quarter went by, and I still wasn't in, at this time I'm thinking, man, my legs are really fresh for the second half. I bet I play a lot. But as the third quarter went by and I still didn't get in, now I'm thinking, okay, is the water cooler going to get in before I do? And with 3 seconds left, my coach calls timeout. He says, Hobbs, get in the game. My teammates inbound the ball. I never touched it. 3, 2, 1, buzzer. Game's over. I get in line, and we shake hands and go home. And I remember being that 10-year-old kid thinking, sitting on the end of the bench, knowing whether it was Little League or intramural basketball, the one common theme, I wasn't wanted. Things would change though. I managed junior high baseball, but what I really wanted, to be like those athletes that I looked up to on TV. Well, my opportunity was going to come. In my hometown, if you go out for football, there's no cuts. That means if you're breathing, if you're breathing, you can play. And I thought, hey, I checked my pulse, I'm breathing, so I'm good to go. And on the last day of camp, I'm super excited because of the disappointments that had led to this moment. And as I'm standing in line, I'm thinking of celebrating with my teammates, scoring that first touchdown, putting on the jersey for the first time, running onto that field, and of course, on Friday afternoon, what lucky girl is going to be able to wear my jersey? When all of a sudden, the head coach out of the equipment room, as I'm waiting in line, fantasizing about all of this, says, "Hey, Hobbs!" And I'm thinking, oh, he probably wants to know what position I want to play or what number I want. We can't give you a helmet and pads without a doctor's note. Immediately, I dropped my head, and I remembered something crucial in my life. My mom had told me earlier on that you never talk back to an adult. So I stepped out of line, and I walked to where my mom was to pick me up. And I still remember to this day the gravel underneath my feet, how it felt. The moment that sticks with me is I open the passenger side door, and I go to get in, to sit down. The first thing I notice is my mom looking out the driver's side window, and her hands are shaking uncontrollably. She turns to me as I shut the door, and she says, "Jeffrey, I'm sorry, baby, but I can't do this anymore. I can't see you constantly get your heart broken. I can't do this. It's killing me." And the toughest moment was when we pulled out of that parking lot, out of my passenger side window, the one thing I remember was my freshman classmates being freshmen, throwing their helmets in the air, laughing with their friends. It taught me a tough moment, a real moment, that just because my mom and I are crying in the car doesn't mean that life stops. And they should have been happy. That was their moment, but I was crushed. So I decided on the way home to have a master plan, to make a change in my life. And the next day, I ran the hallways. I said, "Mom, don't pick me up at 3 o'clock because I'm not going to be ready." She was like, "What?" My goal was to run 30 minutes in that hallway. My goal was to have those football coaches that were coaching outside see me running the halls, and then have a change of heart and put me on the team. I did this for 2 years. Monday through Friday, every day. If I had therapy in the afternoon, I would do this in the morning. And over time, I found this confidence, this unwavering confidence that I could not be shaken. Well, 2 years later, my life changed when the cross-country coach came up to me and says, "Hey, Hobbs, I've been noticing you've been running the halls a lot. Would you be interested in running cross-country?" And immediately, honestly, I took a step back and thought, what the hell are you thinking? And then, of course, my second thought was, I'd love to put on a jersey and compete. I ran 2 years of cross-country and 2 years in track. And I want to say that my workouts were no different than anybody else. If they had to run 5 miles, I had to run 5 miles. and I wouldn't have felt any better. I didn't want any way out. I had to do this for me. And this is my last race as a senior in high school. It's a 2-mile race, and I finished this race in 18 minutes, but I think you'll notice me if you keep watching. We all take off at the same time, by the way. Oh, wait a second, it's got a pan back. There you go. Come on now, I got to stay with it. You can't make me emotional. So, this felt great. This felt amazing. I felt free. I felt vindicated. And most importantly, I wanted to make my mom and my coach proud. But I got greedy. I didn't want to just compete. I wanted to push myself. I wanted to become more. And running was great. But I wanted to set goals that nobody thought was possible. So I was going to do that. My next goal was to run the Chicago Marathon. And when I saw a sports physician, he sat me down after looking at me for 5 minutes. And he said, "There's no way you're going to be able to do this. You won't even get to the starting line." And I looked at him, and he's sitting across the room, probably for a good reason. And I said, "With your help or without it, I'm going to do this." 0% of people with spastic cerebral palsy had ever done it. But you know how much I cared about those statistics? 0%. Now, to give you an idea, the average runner, it takes 52,400 steps to complete a marathon. For me, with my muscle tightness and the tug of war that we were talking about, it would take me 209,600 steps. But guess where I was? This is me at mile 2 of the Chicago Marathon. Now everything's going well. I'm at a good pace. Unfortunately, at mile 5, I tore my tendon that runs underneath my foot. So from mile 5 until mile 11, I'm literally just limping. But my mentality is you can push through anything in life. The pivotal moment was my high school coach that I talked about earlier, who I wanted to make proud. At the 11-mile mark, everybody knew I wasn't going to quit. And he found me at this time during the race. And he comes up behind me and he whispers something to me. And he says, "Jeff, you know how proud of you I am? You have nothing to prove to me." I said, "Thanks, Coach," but I continued, right? And then he whispers in my ear, there's toughness and there's intelligent toughness. And if you continue to go on, you may never walk again. So at the 12.5 mile mark, here I am with my medical staff. They sat down and they said, you can't continue. Your body, you'll never walk again. You'll never respond the same. You'll never have a chance at this again. And I looked at them dead in the eyes and said, because I've never quit a race, I've never quit a practice, I told them, if you're willing to train me again, we'll call it a day. They both agreed, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now, it was crushing, because I'm not a guy that's into moral victories. I'm not a guy at all. Moral victories, I don't need them. They don't make me feel good. But looking back on what was accomplished, I finished 100,000 steps a day. That's 50 miles. And I did 8 of it, which equates to 32 miles on the torn tendon. Sometimes I don't think we equate failure with not reaching that point, but we learn so many things along the way. And what I learned stems back to my first race. I fell in my very first cross-country race 3 times. And I cut my elbow open so bad that there was blood rushing down it. And of course, as I crawled back up to my feet, I finished the race. I finished races with stress fractures, and before the marathon I had a double lung collapse. The point is, by not quitting, by never giving up, it puts ourselves in a position that somebody's opinion of you and what your potential can be doesn't mean a dang thing. All it can do is help you, whether it's doctors, whether it's coaches, whoever it is in your life that's trying to put you down. There's one thing that takes care of all that, and that's by not quitting. I found my authentic self by not quitting. And I implore you today to find out what the goals are that are closest to your heart. Not what somebody else thinks you should do, but the things that you know that if you passed away, that you would look back and regret that you didn't take care of. That's what I want you to do for you. And by doing that, whether it's being a better parent, whether it's setting a goal, whether it's just showing more compassion or being open-minded, it's all there. And the greatest part about not quitting, it keeps you in the game and it always gives you a chance. And that's how it doesn't matter if you end up in first place or last place. That's how we all win together. Thank you.